I'm writing this because they keep asking the same questions and I keep answering them, and the words come out wrong in the room. The fluorescent lights make everything feel like a lie. The detective watches my mouth more than my face. The lady with the laptop doesn't look up when I say things that should make someone look up. They want dates. They want a neat line from first mistake to last. I don't have that. I have a mess of nights and smells, and the feeling that my hands don't belong to me anymore. They told me I could write it down. They said it might help. I don't think it helps anyone. I think it just makes it real. I'm not going to pretend I didn't do it. I did things you can't take back. I did them with my eyes open. That's what makes it worse. The part people won't understand is that the worst thing I saw wasn't the blood. It was the empty space where her eyes should have been. You want me to start at the beginning, so I will. I worked nights doing deliveries for a pharmacy warehouse on the edge of town. It wasn't a glamorous job. It was boxes of cold medicine, insulin, diapers, bandages, the kind of stuff you don't notice until you need it. The warehouse sat in an industrial park with a row of shuttered buildings beside it. One of them used to be a clinic. It was boarded up now, graffiti on the doors, weeds pushing through cracks in the concrete. My route took me past that old clinic on the way to the highway. Every night I drove by it. I never looked at it for long. It was just another dead building. Then, one night, I saw her. She was standing under the broken awning by the entrance, not looking at the road, not waving, just standing there like she had been left there and forgotten. She wore a long coat that didn't fit right, too big at the shoulders, and her hair hung in wet ropes down her back. At first I thought she was homeless, someone trying to stay out of the rain. I slowed down without meaning to. You do that. You tell yourself it's because you might need to stop, because you're being careful, because there could be a person in the road. But I slowed because I wanted to see her face. She turned her head when my headlights hit her. There were no eyes, just smooth skin where the eye sockets should have been, like they had been sealed over. The skin wasn't scarred the way you'd expect. It looked tight and pale, like a healed burn. Her mouth was wrong too. It wasn't a grin. It was a cut that ran from the corners of her lips out toward her ears. It was old, the edges dark and thick like meat that had been pulled apart and decided to stay apart. I hit the brakes so hard, the boxes in the back thumped against the partition. She didn't flinch. She didn't do anything. She stood there with her head angled toward the light, as if she could see it. I drove on. I didn't stop. I didn't call anyone. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a mask, somebody messing around. All the way to my first drop, I kept seeing that face in my rearview mirror. Not the mouth, not the missing eyes, the blank skin where there should have been something looking back. When my shift ended near dawn, I went home and sat on my couch in my shoes. I kept thinking about how she knew I was there. I kept thinking about that small head turn, so calm, so sure. The next night I drove past the clinic and she wasn't there. I felt relief, and I felt something else too. Something like disappointment, and that made me angry with myself. A week went by. Then I saw her again. This time she was closer to the road. I could see that her coat was stained on the sleeves. I could see that her hands were small and cracked. She had something in one hand. At first I thought it was a phone, but it wasn't. It was a strip of paper, folded, held out like an offering. I shouldn't have stopped. I can't make that sentence sound any less pathetic. Everybody says it. Everybody thinks they would keep driving. I was tired. I was lonely. I was the kind of person who picks up a stray cat, even though you know it might bite you. I pulled over. I left the engine running. I didn't get out right away. I rolled the window down enough to talk. "What do you need?" I said. Her head turned toward my voice. The mouth didn't move. That's the part that still gets me. She spoke without changing her face. The words came out flat, like a recording, but they were clear. "Help me," she said. I looked around. There was nobody else. The streetlights were broken on that stretch. The clinic sat behind her like a black mouth. "What happened to you?" I asked, and as soon as I said it, I hated myself for saying it. She lifted the strip of paper. "Read," she said. I didn't want to take it. I didn't want her to touch my hand, but she held it steady. I reached out and grabbed one end. The paper was soft and damp. It smelled like old bandages. On it, in block letters, were 2 words. "Bring me." That was it. No address. No name. Just those 2 words. Thick ink, like it had been written with a marker. "Bring you where?" I asked. "Inside," she said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my body didn't know what else to do. "No," I said. "No, I can't. That place is inside," she repeated. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't threaten. It didn't beg. It was like she was stating a fact. I put the truck in gear. Her hand shot up and slapped the side mirror so hard it cracked. The sound made me jump. I glanced at her and she was right there, closer than she should have been, like she crossed the space without moving. "You stopped," she said. Those 2 words went through me. I drove away fast. I watched her in the mirror until she became a smear in the dark. I told myself it was over. I told myself to report it. I didn't. For the next few nights, I took a different route. I was late on deliveries. I made excuses. My supervisor warned me. Then, on a night when the warehouse was short-staffed and my route was already behind, I took the old way because it was quicker. She was waiting. Not by the clinic entrance. In the road. I swerved around her. My tires screamed on the wet asphalt. The back end fishtailed. I missed her by inches. When the truck straightened out, she was gone. Not behind me. Not in the mirror. Gone. I tried to breathe. I forced myself to keep going. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself to focus on the road. At the next red light, I checked the side mirror. The cracked glass showed a warped reflection of my own face. Then a hand rose up from below, pale and small, and pressed against the mirror from the outside. She was on the passenger side, walking with the truck as if the truck was standing still. I screamed. I stomped the gas. The light turned green and I shot through the intersection. She stayed with me for half a block. I didn't look at her face. I couldn't. Her fingers slid along the window. Then, like she got bored, she stepped away into the darkness. That's when I knew she could follow me if she wanted to. I didn't sleep after that. You'd think I would quit the job, leave town, tell everyone. I didn't do any of that. I kept going to work. I kept driving my routes. I kept acting like routine could protect me. The first murder happened 2 nights later. It wasn't even on my route. I saw it on the news while eating cereal in my kitchen. A body found behind a convenience store. Young man, throat opened, face damaged. They didn't show much, but they described the mouth. They said it looked like someone tried to tear it wider. I dropped the spoon. Milk spilled over the rim and ran down my hand. My first thought wasn't horror. It was relief. I thought, it wasn't me. My second thought was worse. It's her. I told myself I was making connections because my brain needed a reason for the fear. Then they showed a blurry photo from a security camera. A figure in a long coat, hair hanging in strips. The face was a blur of pale. I turned the TV off. That night at work, my supervisor pulled me aside and told me corporate was coming down hard. One more late route, and I'd be done. I nodded and promised to tighten up. On my break, I sat in the cab of my truck and stared at the glove compartment. I don't know why. I just kept staring at it like there was something inside. When I opened it, the strip of paper was there. Bring me. I had thrown it out. I had tossed it in a gas station trash can. I remembered the feel of it in my fingers. I remembered watching it fall between an empty cup and a crumpled receipt. It was in my glove compartment, folded neat. My hands started shaking so hard I couldn't refold it. I crumpled it into a ball and threw it out the window. It landed on the asphalt. The wind caught it and rolled it under the truck. I sat there for a long time, listening to the engine tick. When my shift ended, I went home, and I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I sat at my table with the lights off and stared out the window. Around midnight, my phone vibrated. No number. Just a blocked caller ID. I didn't answer. The phone vibrated again and again until it stopped. A minute later, a text came through. INSIDE. I don't know how she had my number. That's a lie. I know. The answer is that she was already in my life in a way I didn't understand. I spent the next day in a fog. I drove to work like always. I loaded the truck. I did the checks. I watched my hands move through the motions like they belonged to someone else. The whole time, I felt like I was being steered. I didn't see her at the clinic that night. I told myself that meant I'd won. Halfway through my route, I stopped at a pharmacy behind a strip mall. The place was closed. I had a key code to the back entrance. It was a quiet stop. Usually I liked it. The alley behind the mall smelled like old fryer grease. The dumpsters were lined up like tired animals. My boots crunched on broken glass. As I opened the back door, I heard something behind me. Not a tap. Not a whisper. A wet dragging sound like cloth being pulled over concrete. I turned. She was in the alley. Not running toward me. Not sneaking. Just there. Like she had stepped out of the wall. The moonlight hit her face, and I saw the details I had been trying not to see. The skin over her eye sockets wasn't just smooth. It was stretched, thin enough that you could make out a hint of the hollow beneath, like someone had pressed wax over a hole. The cut at her mouth had healed wrong, leaving a thick ridge of scar on both sides. The lips themselves were chapped and split. Her coat was open. Under it she wore a shirt stained dark at the collar and stomach. She held something in her hand, a utility knife, the kind you can buy at any hardware store. I froze. I wish I could tell you I did something heroic. I didn't. She tilted her head toward the pharmacy door, then back to me. "Bring me," she said. I backed up until my shoulder hit the metal door. "I can't," I said. "Bring me," she repeated. The knife hung loose in her hand, not raised yet. I thought about running. I thought about shouting. But the strip mall was empty, and the back lot was quiet. If I ran, where would I go? Into my truck. She could be there too. Past her? I couldn't bring myself to get close. "What do you want?" I asked. Her mouth didn't move when she answered. "Food," she said. "Food." "Warm," she said. I stared at her. I heard myself breathing. I heard the hum of a distant transformer. "Go to a shelter," I said. She lifted the knife just a little. "They closed," she said. I don't know if that was true. I didn't check. I didn't argue. I unlocked the back door and stepped inside. The air was warm. It smelled like disinfectant and cardboard. I held the door open with my foot. She walked past me. I didn't feel her touch, but I felt cold anyway. Inside the pharmacy, the security lights cast everything in a dim yellow. Shelves of shampoo, vitamins, cough drops, a narrow aisle of snacks near the counter. She moved straight to the snacks like she knew where they were. She didn't look around. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed 2 bags of jerky, a box of crackers, and a bottle of water. I should have let her leave with that. That's the truth. But when she turned toward the door, her head angled in my direction like she was listening to something inside me. "You saw me," she said. I swallowed. "You can't," I started. "You saw," she said. "Now you bring. Bring me more." I tried to speak. My mouth was dry. "Why?" I asked. She held the water bottle up near her face. "I can't go outside," she said. "You're outside right now," I said. She shook her head, slow. "Not like this," she said. I didn't understand, and that was the point. She let me stand there confused while she ate a piece of jerky. She chewed without expression, the scarred mouth pulling the meat in and tearing it. Then she said, "You bring, or I open you." The knife moved, just a flick of her wrist. I felt my stomach drop. I nodded. That's the moment I signed up. Not with a pen, with a nod. I drove the rest of my route with her in the passenger seat. I want you to picture that. Me, wearing my company jacket, scanning barcodes, carrying boxes. And beside me, a woman with no eyes and a mouth cut wide, sitting with her hands in her lap like she was waiting for a bus. I didn't know how to get her out. I didn't know how to get help without making her angry. Every time we stopped, she stayed in the cab. I left the doors locked. I kept the keys in my pocket. She didn't try to leave. She didn't have to. On the highway, she spoke again. "You have a place," she said. "I have an apartment," I said. "You bring me," she said. I shook my head. "No." She turned her face toward mine, close. I could smell her. Not just dirt. Something sour, like old blood dried and rewarmed. "Inside," she said. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. "I can drop you somewhere," I said. "Inside," she said. She held the knife against her own throat, not cutting, just pressing. "Inside," she said again, "or I do it here. You will watch. You can judge me. You should." I drove her to my apartment. She walked up the stairs behind me. Her steps were light, almost careful. My neighbors' doors were shut. The hallway smelled like fried onions and damp carpet. Inside my place, she stood by the entryway and waited. I turned on the lamp. The light hit her face, and I saw how uneven the scars were, like somebody had cut and stopped only when they got tired. I asked her if she needed anything else, water, a blanket, a phone. She said, "Sit." I sat on my couch. She walked to my kitchen. She opened drawers, not randomly, like she knew what was in them. She pulled out a paring knife. I stood up. "Don't," she said. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She stood still for a long moment, knife in hand. "Because you saw," she said. That answer should have meant nothing. It meant everything. She moved through my apartment slowly, touching things. The picture frame on my wall, the back of a chair, my coat hanging by the door. Then she stopped at the bathroom. "Mirror," she said. I didn't move. "Mirror," she said again. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the light. The mirror above the sink was small and spotted. She stood in front of it. I watched her from behind. I expected her to react, to flinch, to do something. But she didn't. She lifted her hand and placed it flat on the glass. "What do you see?" I asked, because I didn't know what else to say. She said, "Nothing." Then she turned toward me. "You will bring me sight," she said. I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She stepped close. The scarred mouth stretched, not into a smile, but into something that looked like pain. "You will bring me eyes," she said. I shook my head hard. "No, I'm not." She moved fast, faster than any normal person should. The paring knife pressed into my side just below my ribs, not deep enough to stab, deep enough to make me understand. "Bring," she said. I felt warmth spread under my shirt. She leaned in until her mouth was near my ear. "If you tell," she said, "I will cut you wide. I will make you like me. You will learn how to live without looking." I didn't sleep that night. She sat in my living room in the dark. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the soft scrape of her coat when she shifted. In the morning, she told me to go to work. "You bring," she said. I can't just bring you eyes, I said. That's not a thing. She cocked her head. People have eyes, she said. I wanted to scream. I went to work anyway. I did my job like I always did. I smiled at my supervisor. I made jokes with the guys in the loading bay. I drank coffee and tried not to throw up. All day I could feel her in my apartment. That night when I got home, she was sitting on my couch with my phone in her lap. There is a place, she said. What place? Bar, she said. She said the name of a place I had been once with co-workers. A cheap bar near the river. Loud music. Crowded weekends. I don't understand, I said. You will go, she said. And do what? She lifted her hand and traced the air where her eyes should have been. You will choose, she said. My throat went tight. No, I said. She stood up. The movement was smooth, like she didn't have joints. She walked to my kitchen, opened my fridge, took out a beer, and popped the top on the counter. She drank half of it in one pull. Then she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and said, You will choose. Or I will choose. If I choose everyone. That's when I saw the choice she was giving me. Not a real choice. A trap shaped like one. If I refused, she'd go out and kill whoever she wanted. Strangers, kids, people on the street. If I obeyed, I could try to steer it. I could try to pick someone who deserved it. That's what I told myself. I said, who? She said, a man. One who looks at women like meat. I stared at her. How would you even know? She tapped her finger against her temple. I listen, she said. I didn't argue. We went to the bar. I'll tell you the truth. Walking into that place with her beside me didn't make sense. People noticed her. They had to. The coat, the hair, the face. But nobody reacted like they should have. A guy at the door barely glanced at her. The bartender didn't blink. People bumped into her and kept moving. It was like their brains refused to process what they saw. She stayed close to me. Her hand wrapped around my wrist under my jacket sleeve. Small fingers tight. Choose, she whispered. I scanned the room. There was a group of men near the pool table. Loud, drunk. One of them had his arm around a woman who looked like she wanted to disappear into her own skin. He kept leaning into her, talking into her neck. His hand slid up her thigh. She pushed it away. He did it again. I watched her expression. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. I hated him immediately. I also felt relief, which makes me sick. That one, I said. Her fingers squeezed my wrist. We waited. When he went to the bathroom, I followed. I told myself I was going to warn him. I told myself I was going to scare him, tell him to leave the woman alone. But in the hallway outside the bathrooms, she was already there. How she got ahead of me, I don't know. The man stumbled toward the door, laughing to himself. He stopped when he saw her. The first real reaction I saw from anyone that night was the way his face changed. He took a step back. What the hell is that? He said. She moved in close. He tried to push past her. She grabbed his arm with one hand and jerked him into the men's room. It happened fast. The door swung shut behind them. I stood in the hallway, frozen. I could hear him swearing. I could hear him laughing like he thought it was a joke. Then I heard a hard sound, like something hitting tile. Then a wet, choking noise. I should have run. I opened the door. The smell hit me first. Urine, bleach, and fresh blood. The man was on his knees by the sink, hands pawing at his face. Blood poured between his fingers. She stood behind him, holding the paring knife from my kitchen. She had cut his mouth. Not a small cut. Not a scratch. She had opened him from the corner of his lips toward his ears, deep enough that his cheeks hung loose. His jaw moved wrong when he tried to scream. His eyes were wide, wet, desperate. She leaned down and put her hand over one of his eyes. He tried to push her away. She sliced upward, quick. The scream that came out of him was nothing like the sounds in the bar. It was an animal sound. Blood ran down his cheek and into his open mouth. His hands flailed. She did the other side. I can still see his fingers scraping at the tile, trying to find anything to hold. She stepped back. The man fell forward, face hitting the sink. He slid down and lay on the floor, twitching. His mouth hung open like a broken hinge. She turned toward me. "Take," she said. I didn't move. She stepped closer. "Take," she repeated. I stared at the man's face. I couldn't tell what I was looking at. It wasn't a face anymore. "Take the eyes," she said. My stomach heaved. I shook my head. She grabbed my wrist and pressed the knife into my hand. "Take," she said. I didn't want to. I swear to you I didn't want to. But I also didn't want her to go back into the bar and pick someone else. I didn't want her to do this to the woman he had been grabbing. I knelt. The man's eyes were still there. One of them was split, leaking clear fluid mixed with blood. The other was intact, staring straight up at me. His mouth moved. A horrible wet flap. He made a sound like a question. I put my hand on his forehead to hold him still. The skin was slick. The knife slipped at first. I tried again. It's not like in movies. There's resistance. There's tissue. There's a snap when it gives. I took the first one. I can't describe it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm trying to impress you. I'm not. It was a small, soft thing in my palm, heavier than you'd think, and it was warm. The man made a sound and then he didn't. I took the other. When I stood up, my knees almost buckled. She held out her hand like a child asking for candy. I dropped them into her palm. She closed her fingers around them and lifted them to her face. She pressed them against the sealed skin where her eye sockets should have been. They slid. They smeared. It didn't make her see. It didn't change anything. But she shuddered like it felt good. Then she tucked them into her coat pocket. "Good," she said. She wiped the knife on my jacket sleeve. "Now you know," she said. I stumbled out of the bathroom and into the noise of the bar. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked why there was blood on my sleeve. The woman at the pool table looked at me, and then looked away, like her eyes slid off me. We left. Outside, the cold air hit my face, and I started shaking so hard my teeth clicked. She walked beside me like we were a couple leaving after a quiet drink. In my car, she sat and faced forward. "More," she said. I gripped the steering wheel. "No," I said. She turned her head. "More," she said again. "You can't," I said. "You can't just keep doing this." She tilted her head. "You brought," she said. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't gratitude. It was a sentence. From that night on, I wasn't a person. I was a tool. I tried to fight it in small ways. I tried to be slow. I tried to pretend I couldn't find anyone. I tried to take her to places where there were cameras. It didn't matter. She had a way of making the world bend. The second murder was in my apartment building. A man on the third floor named Frank. I didn't know him well. He smoked in the stairwell and complained about parking. I had seen him yell at his girlfriend through the door. She chose him. We waited in the hallway outside his unit. She stood so still I thought she had stopped breathing. When he came out to take the trash, she stepped behind him and covered his mouth. He struggled, elbows flailing, trash bag swinging. She dragged him into the stairwell. I followed because if I didn't, I knew she would make it worse. In the narrow space between floors, she pushed him against the wall and cut his face open. He tried to scream, but she held his jaw. His hands scrabbled at her coat. She cut his throat. Blood sprayed the concrete in a hot arc. He slid down the wall like he was melting. She looked at me. "Eyes," she said. I cried that time. Quiet tears, embarrassing, useless. I did it anyway. I dug my thumbs into the soft places around his eyes. I used the knife. I took them. When I put them in her hand, my fingers brushed hers. Her skin was cold and dry. She pressed them to her sealed sockets like before, then pocketed them. "Better," she said. I couldn't live with her in my apartment anymore. I tried to call the police once. I dialed and hung up. I dialed again and hung up. She was behind me when I did it. I didn't hear her move. "Don't," she said. She put the knife on the counter in front of me. Then she placed her hand over my eyes. The pressure was gentle, almost careful. "Imagine," she said, "no light, no faces, only sound, only touch." "I can teach you." I jerked away. I slept in my car that night. In the morning, when I went back to my apartment, she was gone. I should have left town. I didn't. I told myself she was gone for good. Then the note showed up on my windshield. "Bring me." Under it, in smaller letters, a new line. "The River Place." I went. Not because I wanted to, because I was already hers. The River Place was an old service road near the water, blocked off with a rusted gate that people ignored. Teenagers went there to drink. Guys went there to dump furniture. She stood near the gate, coat hanging open, hair damp. She held something up, a pair of eyes. Not loose, not in her palm like before, sewn onto the outside of her coat. 2 eyes stitched into the fabric where her chest was. They stared out at me, shiny and wrong. My stomach lurched. "You keep them," I said, voice cracking. She nodded. "Mine," she said. I took a step back. She took a step forward. "You bring more," she said. "I can't," I said. "People will notice. They'll catch me." Her mouth stretched. "Good," she said. That word hit me like a slap. She wanted me caught. She wanted me cornered. She wanted me to be the one they saw. I realized then that I wasn't guiding anything. I wasn't preventing anything. I was just making it easy for her. I tried to run. I bolted down the service road toward the river, shoes slipping on wet gravel. I heard her behind me. Not footsteps, just the sound of her coat dragging. I turned once and saw her moving without hurry, like she knew I would tire. I ran until my lungs burned. The river was black and fast. I stopped at the edge, panting. She was a few feet away. Her head tilted. "You can't leave," she said. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I can. I'm done." She lifted her hand. In it was my phone. I froze. She had my phone again. "You can't," she said. "You already brought. Now you belong." She stepped closer. I backed up and my heel slipped on the bank. My arms flailed. I fell. Cold water hit my back and stole my breath. I thrashed, trying to grab something. Her hand clamped onto my jacket collar and yanked me back onto the gravel. I lay there coughing river water, shaking. She crouched beside me. Her face was close enough that I could see the pores in the skin that covered her eye sockets. "You will bring one more," she said. "No," I rasped. She pressed the knife to my cheek. "Then I start," she said. And she drew the blade slowly, not deep, but enough to split the corner of my mouth. Pain flashed hot. I slapped my hand to my face. Blood smeared my fingers. I tasted metal. She said, "You feel it. Now you know. Bring." I nodded because I was a coward. Because I was afraid of pain. Because I had already crossed the line, and the line had vanished behind me. The last murder I'm going to describe in this chapter is the one that got me caught. It was a woman named Elise. She worked at the same warehouse, in inventory. We weren't friends. We said hello. We shared the same coffee pot. She was kind to me in the small way people can be kind, without meaning anything by it. She once covered for me when I came in late. She once asked if I was doing okay when I looked tired. I chose her because she trusted me. I'm not trying to soften that. I'm saying it because it's the truth, and it makes me sick. The eyeless woman didn't pick Elise. I did. I told myself I was choosing someone I could get alone, someone who wouldn't cause a scene, someone who would make it quick. I told myself I was choosing the lesser harm. I also told myself a part of me wanted it to be over, and getting caught would make it over. After our shift, I offered Elise a ride home. Her car was in the shop, she said. She hesitated, then smiled and said yes. She got in my car and thanked me. I drove the wrong way. When she noticed, she asked where we were going. "I need to stop by the warehouse," I said. "I forgot something." She frowned but didn't argue. In the back seat, the eyeless woman lay flat on the floor behind the driver's seat. Elise didn't see her. I didn't look back. At the warehouse, I used my badge to get us in. The building was quiet, lights dimmed for night mode. I led Elise toward the inventory office. "What did you forget?" she asked. My mouth was dry. "Just a form," I said. The eyeless woman rose behind us like a shadow peeling off the wall. Elise turned at the sound of movement. For a second, her face was blank, like her brain couldn't accept what it saw. Then the scream came. It was loud in the empty warehouse. It bounced off concrete and metal. She tried to run. The eyeless woman grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back. Elise fought hard. She clawed at the eyeless woman's face. Her fingernails scraped scar tissue. The eyeless woman didn't react. She cut Elise's mouth open first. Elise's scream turned into a bubbling sound. Blood poured down her chin. She tried to speak. She tried to beg. The eyeless woman cut her throat. Elise collapsed. Her eyes were wide with panic even as her body stopped working. I stood there. I didn't move. That's the part I can't forgive in myself. The stillness. The eyeless woman looked at me. "Take," she said. I knelt. I did it. Then the warehouse alarm started. I hadn't tripped it. Elise had, when she ran. Her badge must have hit a door sensor. A loud siren filled the building. Red lights flashed. I looked up, blinking, confused, like I had woken from a dream. The eyeless woman tilted her head. "Run," she said. I clutched the eyes in my fist, warm and slick. I ran. I sprinted through the warehouse, past stacked pallets, past the loading docks. I could hear doors opening somewhere. I could hear someone shouting. My shoes slipped in a puddle of something on the floor, and I almost fell. I barreled out into the parking lot. Security was already there, a guy in a windbreaker running toward me. He saw my bloody face. He saw my hands. He drew back like I was a wild animal. I didn't stop. I ran past him. I heard him yell into his radio. I reached my car. The driver's door was open. The eyeless woman was sitting in the driver's seat. Her hands were on the steering wheel. She faced forward. I froze. "You can't," I gasped. She turned her head. "Inside," she said. I heard footsteps behind me. I heard someone yelling, "Stop!" I looked at her face, at the sealed eyes, at the mouth cut wide. I saw blood on her coat. I saw the stitched eyes on her chest. I saw my life in that moment as a series of coward steps. I didn't get in the car. I dropped to my knees in the parking lot. I held my hands out. The warm weight of Elise's eyes rolled in my palm. A security guard tackled me. My face hit asphalt. My cheeks split open more. I tasted grit. I started crying, loud, embarrassing, ugly. Behind me, I heard the car door close. I twisted my head and saw my car drive away. Not fast. Not like a getaway. It rolled out of the lot calmly, like someone leaving after a shift. Nobody chased it. Nobody even looked. They were all focused on me. That's how I got caught. They hauled me into the security office, handcuffed. They took the eyes from my hands in plastic evidence bags. They asked me what the hell I had done. I tried to tell them. I said, "There's a woman. She made me. She has no eyes." They stared at me like I was insane. Maybe I am. They asked where she went. I said I didn't know. That was true. I only knew she wasn't finished. That's what you wanted. The confession. The explanation. Here it is in plain terms. I saw her. I stopped. I let her in. I helped her kill. I stole eyes from people who still had breath in them. I gave them to her. And when I finally refused to get in the car with her, she left me behind like trash. The detective asked me why. Why did I do it? Why didn't I run? Why didn't I fight? I don't have a clean answer. I was afraid. I was weak. And after the first time, after my hands did that thing and she said good, a part of me believed I had already become the kind of person who would do it again. That part of me was right. When they brought me into the station, they sat me in a room and left me alone for a while. I stared at the wall. I stared at the table. I stared at my hands. I felt the cut at the corner of my mouth pulling when I swallowed. I thought about Elise. I thought about the man at the bar. I thought about Frank. Then I heard a voice, calm and flat, from the other side of the door. "Inside," it said. The handle didn't turn. The door didn't open. But I heard it. And when I looked at the one-way mirror, I saw something stitched to the glass. 2 eyes, not drawn, not painted. Real. Pinned there like a message. Looking back at me. They put me in a holding cell that smelled like old sweat and disinfectant. The bench was metal and cold and too short to lie on without curling up. My cheek kept sticking to the dried blood at the corner of my mouth whenever I swallowed. I asked for water. They ignored me for a while, then slid a paper cup through the slot like they were feeding an animal. I drank and tried not to think about Elise's face. I tried not to think about my hands. In the morning, they moved me to a small room with a table bolted to the floor. The detective came back with a second detective. The second one had a clean haircut and tired eyes. They put a recorder on the table and asked me to go through it again. I told them there was a woman. I told them what she looked like. I told them she was in my car when they grabbed me. The tired-eyed detective nodded like he'd heard worse things from people who were high or desperate. The other one didn't nod. He stared at my mouth. "You're saying she forced you," he said. "I'm saying I helped," I said. He looked at the recorder and leaned closer. "Why would you help?" I didn't have a story that made me look better. I didn't have an angle. "Because I'm weak," I said. "Because I believed her." "Believed what?" "That she would do it anyway," I said. "That if I didn't, it would be worse." He wrote something down. "Where is she now?" "I don't know," I said. I meant it. They asked about the note. They asked about my phone. They asked about the old clinic. They asked if I'd ever been inside. I told them I hadn't. That part was true too. She wanted me to bring her inside places, but I never crossed into that clinic. I never had the nerve to go in. That's the kind of detail that should make someone feel less guilty. It doesn't. They left me alone again. When you're alone like that, your brain tries to fill the space. It replays scenes. It builds new ones. It picks at one sentence until it turns into a hook. You already brought. Now you belong. The first time they let me sleep, it was on a thin mattress in a cell with a blanket that smelled like bleach and something sour underneath. I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling and waited for my body to shut down. I didn't dream. I woke up to the sound of keys and a guard telling me to stand up. They walked me down a hallway past doors that made heavy noises when they opened and closed. I tried not to look at the other cells. I didn't want to see anyone's face. They gave me a public defender. He was young, with a cheap tie and a folder he kept tapping like it was a shield. He sat across from me and said, "You understand what you're charged with?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you understand how this looks?" I almost laughed. My mouth hurt too much. "I know how it looks," I said. He asked me to tell him my version. I told him the same thing I told the detectives. He listened, and when I was done, he didn't call me crazy. He didn't say I was lying. He just looked down at his folder and said, "We need to be careful about what you say in court." "I'm not trying to get out of it," I said. He looked up. "You should be," he said. I shook my head. "I'm trying to get her," I said. "I'm trying to make them look for her." He rubbed his forehead. "Okay," he said, like he was humoring a child. That's how it was from then on. Everybody treated the eyeless woman like a story I made up because I couldn't face what I did. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe I needed her to be real because the alternative is worse. That I did all of it without anyone pushing. But I know what I saw. They processed me. They took photos. They took my clothes. They took swabs. They asked about injuries. A nurse looked at the cut at the corner of my mouth and cleaned it without saying much. She asked, "How did this happen?" I told her. She didn't react. That became a theme. In the days after my arrest, the world outside kept moving. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. The guards talked. The other inmates talked. My lawyer brought me newspapers. My name was in them. Elise's name was in them. There were photos of my building, the warehouse, the bar. They called it a string of killings. They called it senseless. They said I was a monster and a coward. They said I preyed on people who trusted me. They weren't wrong. There were details in the articles that made my stomach flip, because they were details I didn't tell anyone. Things like the word "inside," printed like it was just another odd note. They said a message was found at the station. They didn't say what it was. My lawyer told me to stop reading. I didn't. At night, the jail had its own sounds. Distant voices, a toilet flushing, someone coughing, someone crying, a TV blaring from a common area. I tried to let those sounds anchor me. If I could keep my mind in that room, maybe she couldn't get in. But she kept showing up in small ways. Not as a full figure standing at my cell door. Not as a jump scare. I'm not going to dress it up. It was the smell first. Old bandages, warmed blood, That sour, stale thing that didn't belong in a place that smelled like bleach. I'd be sitting on my bunk and catch it, and my throat would clamp shut. Then it was the notes. I know what you're thinking. In jail, people slide notes. People mess with each other. But these weren't jokes. A folded scrap would appear under my mattress or tucked into the corner where the wall met the bed frame. The paper would be damp, like it had been held in someone's mouth. Sometimes it would say, "Bring me." Sometimes it would say inside. Once it said, "Look." I showed one to a guard. He told me to stop making things up. I tore the next one into pieces and flushed it. The next morning it was back. Same words, same thick ink. There's a point where your brain starts looking for the edges of reality, like you're pressing on drywall to find a hollow spot. That's what it felt like the world around me had a thin place, and she knew exactly where to push. The detectives came back with photos. They laid them on the table one at a time. They didn't show me everything. They didn't have to. The corners of those images were enough. They asked me if I recognized the locations. I recognized the bar bathroom. I recognized my stairwell. I recognized the warehouse corridor. They asked me if I understood what I'd done. I said yes. They asked me again, like they thought I might say no if they said it enough. I told them about the clinic again. I told them I saw her there. I told them to check it. They said they did. "It's empty," the tired-eyed detective said. "No sign anyone's been living there." I looked at him. "Check the walls," I said. He stared. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," I said. "But check." He didn't write it down. Maybe he did and I didn't see. Then they asked me a question that sat in my skull like a rock. "Why the eyes?" the other detective said. I couldn't answer. Not with something that made sense. "It wasn't me," I said. He slammed his hand on the table. "It was your knife," he said. "Your apartment. Your hands. Don't do that. Don't push it off on some ghost." I flinched. The tired-eyed detective leaned back and spoke softer. "Do you hear voices?" he asked. I understood what he was asking. I said, "I hear her." He nodded like that fit into a box he'd already built. They left. After that, they stopped treating me like a witness and started treating me like a problem to manage. My lawyer came back a week later looking older. "They're adding charges," he said. I said, "Okay." He stared at me for a long second. "You're not reacting," he said. "What reaction do you want?" I said. He opened his folder and slid a paper toward me. It was a photo of my car, found in an empty lot on the other side of town. The driver's seat was soaked in something dark. On the dashboard, something had been arranged. He covered most of it with his hand. "I'm not showing you the rest," he said. My mouth went dry. "Did they find her?" I asked. He hesitated. "They didn't find anyone," he said. "No body." I stared at the part of the photo I could see. "What was arranged?" I asked. He pulled the paper back. "It doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is they think you did it." I wanted wanted to laugh again, that ugly laugh that's just air and pain. They think I did everything, I said. He leaned in. They're going to try to make an example, he said. You need to help me help you. I told him, I'm not trying to get less. He sat back like he didn't know what to do with that. You have family, he said. They're calling me. They're asking if this is real. I didn't answer. My mother didn't come to see me. My sister didn't either. I don't blame them. I wouldn't have visited me. The only person who showed up was my supervisor from the warehouse. He sat behind the glass in the visiting room and picked at a hangnail. He looked like he hadn't slept. I keep thinking about the coffee pot, he said. How you were just there, every night, like it was nothing. I stared at the phone. I'm sorry, I said. He shook his head. Don't, he said. Don't say sorry. That doesn't mean anything. He looked up at me. Did she suffer? He asked. My stomach tightened. He didn't say Elise's name. He didn't have to. I swallowed. Yes, I said. His face twisted like I'd hit him. He stood up so fast his chair scraped. Why? He said, voice breaking. Why her? Why not you? I didn't have an answer. He left without saying goodbye. After he left, I went back to my cell and sat on the bunk and tried to picture Elise's last moments without turning them into a movie in my head. I couldn't. The court process was slow. Days blurred. I was moved between jail and courthouse in a van with other men who smelled like sweat and nicotine. We wore the same clothes and shuffled in the same lines. We sat in holding cells under different fluorescent lights. In court, I saw Elise's family from a distance. I didn't look long. I wasn't brave enough. The prosecutor talked about my pattern. They talked about me like I was a machine built for it. They pointed to the way it escalated, the way it spread. They said I enjoyed it. They said I hunted. My lawyer tried to argue something about mental state. I wanted to stand up and say, none of that changes anything. But the court isn't for that. The court is a machine too. They asked me to take a plea. My lawyer said, if you take this, you avoid trial. You avoid the worst. I said, what's the worst? He didn't answer. He just looked away. I took the plea, not because I wanted to be spared, because I wanted it to stop being a story in other people's mouths. At the sentencing, people got to speak. Elise's mother spoke. Her voice didn't shake. That was what made it hard to listen to. She described her daughter's life in plain terms. Work, friends, little plans, nothing dramatic. She said Elise was the kind of person who offered rides. She said Elise believed people. Then she looked directly at me. I hope you live a long time, she said. I hope you have to wake up every day and remember. I did not deserve the steadiness of her anger. When it was over, they moved me to a prison a few hours away. Prison has a different smell than jail. Jail smells like panic and cleaning product. Prison smells like time, old concrete, cooked food, bodies living too close together for too long. They gave me a number. They gave me a bed in a unit with men who had their own stories and their own rules. Some of them knew who I was before I opened my mouth. One guy looked at the corner of my mouth where the scar had healed and said, "You did that to yourself?" I shook my head. He laughed without humor. "You're dead," he said. Maybe I am. The first month I kept my head down. I ate fast. I showered when I could. I didn't talk unless I had to. I tried to become invisible. It didn't work. There are two kinds of attention in a place like that. The kind you can see coming, and the kind you can't. The kind you can see came from men who wanted to hurt me because of what I did to Elise. The kind you can't came from her. The eyeless woman followed me in ways that didn't fit the walls. The first time I saw proof, real proof, not just smell or paper, was in the library. I'd gone there because it was quiet, because books don't ask questions. I sat at a table and opened a random paperback. I wasn't reading. I was just staring at the print like it might settle my brain. A page near the middle had been ripped out and replaced with a different sheet, tucked in like a bookmark. On it were two small circles made of thread. Eyes. Not real ones. Not flesh. Thread stitched into the paper, crude but unmistakable. Under them in block letters, INSIDE. My hands went numb. I looked around. The guard at the door wasn't watching me. The other inmates were scattered at tables, talking, flipping pages. Nobody was paying attention. I shoved the paper back into the book and closed it like that would shut it away. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the unit breathe. Coughing, snoring, footsteps on the floor. Around the time when the lights dimmed, I heard someone whisper near my bunk. Not a dramatic whisper, not a hiss, just a calm voice, close. "You keep them." I froze. My cellmate shifted in his sleep. I stared into the darkness. "What?" I whispered back. "You keep them," the voice said again. I couldn't see anyone. My throat tightened. "No," I said. "I don't have anything." A quiet sound, like fabric moving. Then, liar. The next morning, my pillowcase was inside out. Stitched into the seam with thick thread were two circles. Eyes. I ripped the pillowcase apart and flushed the thread down the toilet. Later that day, a guard searched my bunk and found nothing. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. "You okay?" he asked. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say the truth. But the truth had already been filed under excuse. So I said, "Yeah." After that, the prison psychologist asked to see me. Her office had 2 chairs and a box of tissues. She asked me about childhood, about stress, about whether I had hallucinations. I told her about the eyeless woman. She nodded the way professionals nod when they're not surprised. "You've built a figure," she said, "to carry parts of your guilt." "It's not that," I said. She kept her voice calm. "Do you regret what you did?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you take responsibility?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She leaned forward. "Then we can work with reality," she said. I stared at her. "You don't think she's real?" I said. She didn't answer directly. "I think you're in danger," she said. "From yourself and others. I want you to focus on keeping yourself safe." Safe. That word felt like a joke, because the danger wasn't in my head. The danger was in the thin places. Weeks later, a guard came to my bunk and told me I had a visitor. I didn't have visitors. I walked to the visiting room with my stomach tight, trying to think who it could be. My mother? No. My sister? No. Some reporter? Maybe. They sat me down behind the glass and handed me the phone. On the other side, in the chair where someone should have been, was a coat. A long coat. Empty. It hung on the chair like someone had just stepped out of it. The guard by the door looked bored. I stared at the coat. My mouth went dry. The phone buzzed in my hand, waiting. I lifted it. For a long moment there was only static. Then, in that calm, flat voice, "You left me." My heart punched hard. I didn't answer. "You left me outside," she said. My fingers hurt from gripping the phone. "I'm here," I managed. A pause, then, "You are inside. Now you bring from inside." I felt sick. "I can't," I whispered. "You can," she said. "You already did." The coat didn't move, but the air felt colder. "You want more," I said, voice shaking. "I want sight," she said. "I want to look." "You promised." "I didn't promise," I said. "You nodded," she said. That was true. I swallowed. "I'm not doing anything else," I said. Silence. Then, very softly, "Then you will be blind." The line went dead. The guard opened the door and said time was up. I pointed at the chair. "There was a coat," I said. "Someone was..." He glanced. The chair was empty. No coat. Nothing. He looked at me like I was trying something. "Move," he said. They wrote me up later for agitation. The psychologist adjusted my meds even though I wasn't on any. It was paperwork. A way to box me. I stopped talking about her. Not because I stopped believing. Because I learned that saying it out loud only helped her. If she was real, it gave her room. If she wasn't, it didn't matter. Either way, I was alone with it. Time passed in that slow, brutal way it does in prison. Seasons changed outside and the air inside stayed the same. My scar itched sometimes. My body hardened, not in a heroic way, just in the way bodies adapt. Then the killing started again. I didn't see it on TV. I heard it through the edges of the place. A guard muttering to another guard. A nurse talking in the hallway. A headline on a newspaper someone left on a bench. There were new victims. Different parts of the city. Same signature. They didn't write the details. They didn't need to. I recognized the words they used when they didn't want to describe something. Severe facial trauma. Unusual mutilation. Eyes removed. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. I went cold all over. I sat on my bunk and stared at my hands. I hadn't done it. I couldn't do it. And yet it was happening. I asked to see the detective again. I asked through my lawyer. I wrote letters. Nobody answered. Then, one afternoon, the tired-eyed detective showed up in the prison interview room. He looked older than when I last saw him. He sat across from me and didn't waste time. "We have more bodies," he said. I nodded. He watched my face. "We found something," he said. I waited. He slid a photo across the table. It was a streetlight pole. Pinned to it with a nail was a scrap of paper. 2 words. "Bring me." Under it, in smaller letters, "He is inside." My mouth went numb. He tapped the photo. "This shows up near the latest scene," he said. "And then we get anonymous tips about you, about your case, about where you used to live." I swallowed. "She wants you to think it's me," I said. He studied me. "Why?" he asked. "Because she wants me to carry it," I thought. "Because she doesn't want to be seen. Because she likes being a story more than a person." I said, "Because I helped her. Because I'm easy to blame." He leaned back. "You told us about a clinic," he said. I felt my pulse pick up. "Yes," I said. He nodded. "We went back," he said. "We brought dogs. We brought a crew. We cut into the wall where the old exam rooms were." My throat tightened. He looked at me like he didn't want to say the next part. "We found a space," he said. "A crawl space between rooms. Somebody had been in there." I held my breath. "There were things," he said. He didn't describe them. He didn't have to. "We also found something else," he said. He reached into his file and pulled out a clear evidence bag. Inside was a piece of fabric, a scrap of a coat. On it, stitched with thick thread, were 2 circles. Eyes. My skin went cold. The detective watched me carefully. "You recognize this?" he said. "Yes," I whispered. He nodded. "We're trying to understand how your story fits," he said. "Whether you had an accomplice, whether you're still directing something from inside." "I'm not," I said. "I can't." He stared at me for a long moment. "Do you think she's real?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I know she is," I said. He looked away. When he looked back, his face was tight. "We're going to keep looking," he said. "But you need to understand something." "What?" I said. He leaned forward. "If she exists, she's using you," he said. "She's writing your name into it so we keep you as the center, so we keep coming back to you." I nodded. "I know," I said. He sat back. "Then why would she do that?" he asked. I thought about the way people didn't look at her, the way their minds slid off her face. I thought about the way she made me do the looking. "She needs someone to see her," I said, "even if it's only the person she breaks." He didn't respond. He gathered his papers. As he stood, he hesitated. "Do you feel safe in here?" he asked. I almost laughed. "Safer than outside," I said. He gave a small, grim nod, like that was the best answer he'd get. After he left, I sat in that room for a while, staring at the table. My hands were still. My mouth hurt. I thought about the note that said, "He is inside." I thought about her voice on the prison phone. Then I understood something that should have been obvious. Inside doesn't mean a building. It doesn't mean a room. It means a person. It means the place where you keep your private thoughts, the ones you don't say out loud. That's where she lives. That's why she doesn't need doors. That's why she never had to break in. Because the moment I stopped and looked at her, I opened something. I went back to my unit that evening and tried to keep my mind blank. It's hard to keep your mind blank when you have years to fill. I lay on my bunk and stared at the underside of the top bunk. I listened to my cellmate breathe. I listened to the unit settle. Then, very lightly, I felt something brush the corner of my mouth. Not a hand, not a blade, a fingertip. I froze. The air smelled like damp paper. A voice close to my ear, calm as ever. "You understand now," she said. I couldn't move. I didn't want to answer. "You bring from inside," she said. I whispered, "No." A soft sound like fabric shifting. Then, "Yes." I squeezed my eyes shut so hard my head hurt. I pressed my palms over my own eyes, like I could keep something out by blocking light. I stayed like that until my arms cramped. When I finally opened my eyes, the unit looked the same. Concrete, bunks, men sleeping. On the floor beside my bed, right where my foot would land in the morning, was a small square of paper. I didn't touch it. I stared at it until the edges blurred. In block letters it said, "Bring me," and under it, "Or I will bring you." I'm not writing this to sound dramatic. I'm writing it because it's the last honest thing I can offer. You can lock me up for the rest of my life, and you should. But if you're reading this because you think the story ends with a sentence and a cell door, you're wrong. It didn't start with a murder. It started when I looked. So if you ever see a woman standing somewhere she shouldn't be, and something in you tells you to slow down and get a better look, don't. Keep going. Because the moment you stop and try to understand her, she learns your shape. And after that, she doesn't need to see you.